Welcome to the debate. Look, the Lakers they're scorching hot right now. After that thoroughly dominant 135-118 victory over the rival Clippers, the whole conversation surrounding this team has just fundamentally changed. They aren't just in the mix anymore. People are starting to talk about them as real title favorites.
And that urgency is creating a lot of noise.
Exactly. And this atmosphere of urgency, it's pretty much entirely driven by Luka Doncic's play. The command, the confidence he has. It suggests the front office almost has a moral imperative to solidify this championship window right now. And so the rumor, the flashpoint, is this move to get Daniel Gafford from Dallas, reportedly costing Jared Vanderbilt, Dalton Nex, and a very high-value 2031 first-round pick.
And the price tag is exactly where this whole debate really lives.
It is. So the central question for us today is this. Does this trade for Daniel Gafford represent a necessary, title-defining move that maximizes the Lakers' immediate championship window? Does it address that critical defensive vulnerability? Or is it an unjustifiable, high-risk overpayment that mortgages far too much of the future for a solution whose impact isn't even guaranteed?
I am going to be arguing for the latter. I recognize the team's momentum, I see the talent in Gafford, but sacrificing that much draft capital, it feels strategically reckless.
And I'll present the case that this is not just a good move, but an essential, transformative one. It's the final piece you need to stabilize the one area of weakness that could derail this entire season. If they don't do this, they are frankly inviting disaster.
Okay, so let's delve into that vulnerability then.
The premise is, it's simple, but it could be catastrophic. For all the offensive firepower, for all of Doncic's brilliance, this team has an Achilles heel in the paint. DeAndre Ayton is playing, adequately, but the rotation just falls off a cliff right behind him. Our internal analysis shows an injury or even just consistent foul trouble for Ayton could instantly dismantle the entire interior defense. We've seen it before, promising seasons undone by one hole. Gafford at 27 isn't just insurance, he's a foundational piece. Explosive, pure energy, a respectful rim protector, and crucially, we know he can do it because he helped anchor the Mavericks to a finals campaign right alongside Luka. This is a move to get results, not to bet on potential.
That's a compelling case, but I come at it from a completely different risk assessment. I see the urgency, I see the quality of the player, I get it. However, you're looking at a massive outlay of capital here. 2 rotation players in Vanderbilt and Knock who give you immediate defensive utility, plus that huge 2031 first-round pick. And this is the essential question, if Gafford's integration is complicated or if his impact is just marginal instead of seismic, then we've sacrificed all that future flexibility for, what? A short-term speculative boost. And I have to say, the fact that this is still just a rumor tells me the front office is wrestling with this. For me, it all comes back to that 2031 pick. That is your insurance policy for the future, a potential cornerstone long after this window closes. And to sacrifice that for immediate stability, it feels imprudent, especially when the team is already winning so convincingly.
But see, you're focusing on the future cost. I see the willingness to pay that price as the strongest possible evidence of this moment's value. The front office knows this window is different. They see that 135-118 win, and they don't see a reason to rest. They see confirmation that they are one piece away from a guarantee. You have to strike now.
Okay, but that immediate success leads us right into our first big point of contention, the actual severity of this defensive weakness. You're citing past trauma, but does the current, overwhelming dominance really suggest an immediate, desperate need for such a high-stakes trade? The fear of Ayton getting hurt is valid, but reacting to a potential injury instead of the current reality, it feels like an overreaction. When you're putting up 135 on a rival, how severe is that collapse risk right now?
The severity is masked, but it is very, very real, particularly if you look beyond the box score. Look at the advanced metrics. Even in these dominant wins, the Lakers struggle with opponent offensive rebounding. Ayton's personal foul rate tends to spike under pressure when he knows there's no reliable backup. So, sure, this weakness isn't obvious in a regular season blowout, but it becomes a fatal flaw in a 7-game playoff series against a team built to attack the paint. You know, a Nikola Jokic or a healthy Joel Embiid. Gafford isn't just a backup. He changes the entire defensive scheme. He gives you consistent, high-level defense that lets the perimeter guys play more aggressively. He turns the defense from just good into a nearly impenetrable fortress. This is about raising the ceiling, not just patching a hole.
I'm just not convinced that moving from highly functional to impenetrable fortress justifies sacrificing the entire future. And that brings us to the second contention, the true value of that 2031 first-round pick.
Well, the front office clearly believes the immediate return is worth it. They see the pick as disposable when you weigh it against a potential ring. This is the very definition of betting big while you can. The value of that 2031 pick it's highly speculative. It's almost a decade away. The league, the draft class, the salary cap, everything could be totally different. We're prioritizing the certainty of a championship with a proven 27-year-old center over the highly unpredictable value of a pick that far out. That is a sensible commitment to winning now.
I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. I don't buy that the uncertainty justifies just throwing it away. The distance is precisely what makes it such high-value collateral. When a team with high expectations trades a distant, unprotected pick, its value actually increases because the probability of the current core declining by 2031 is extremely high. That 2031 pick could easily be a lottery pick, a cornerstone for the next era of the franchise. And we aren't just trading a pick, we're giving up Jared Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt gives you defensive versatility and lateral quickness that Gafford simply does not have. He can switch onto multiple positions. We are solving one problem, the interior anchor, by potentially creating another one on the perimeter.
I appreciate that concern, I do, but Gafford's game is so much more complementary to Doncic's timeline right now. Gafford is 27, he fits this competitive window for the next 4 or 5 years. He's a genuine anchor, a long-term piece, not just a rental. When you really analyze the risk, the greatest risk is not having that defensive consistency when Doncic is at his absolute peak. You trade a solid piece like Vanderbilt for a player who unlocks a championship-level defense. The reward to me far outweighs the tactical loss of switchability.
But if he's a long-term cornerstone, why are we paying this immediate, almost panic-driven price for him? It feels like the board is looking for both long-term security and an immediate title. And those two things rarely align without a crippling cost. Which brings us to our third point, the certainty of fit and chemistry.
And I think the certainty of fit is remarkably high precisely because his offensive game is so specialized.
I have to question that synergy. The rumor says his game fits like a glove with Los Angeles' fluid and fast-paced attack. But what if that's just optimistic spin? A high-motor player like Gafford has to instantly absorb new defensive rotations, new communication systems. We've seen him work in the Dallas system, sure. But what if the integration into the Lakers system is slower than we expect? If he needs 30 games to get up to speed, you've wasted the most critical part of the title push.
I think the risk of chemistry failure is minimal because Gafford's role is, well, it's fundamentally simple and it's highly complementary to Doncic's mastery. His job on offense is vertical spacing, rim runs, and finishing the easy dump-offs that Doncic creates better than anyone. He doesn't need to run complex sets. He just needs to focus on rebounding and protecting the rim. You know, Doncic is the orchestra. Gafford is the reliable percussion section. By guaranteeing that insurmountable wall on one side, as the analysts put it, he frees up the entire perimeter. Any minor offensive growing pains will be completely overshadowed by the massive defensive lift he provides from day one.
That definition of simple feels overly optimistic in a championship environment. Even a specialized role requires time. A defensive anchor has to learn the specific cadence of the guards, know when to hedge, when to drop. We're asking him to step onto a contending team and instantly have a championship-level defensive IQ. And we're trading away Vanderbilt, who already has that IQ within the scheme. That transition period could be very costly, especially if we factor in the financials. If the Lakers don't win a title immediately, that 2031 pick is going to look even worse in hindsight.
But the current financial realities dictate that when you have a star like Doncic playing at this level, you cannot afford to wait. The cost of not maximizing this window, the opportunity cost, it far outweighs the future value of some distant speculative draft pick. We are moving from a team that might win the title to a team that should be overwhelmingly favored to do so. That level of certainty is worth the risk.
I would argue that certainty is an illusion. You're trading guaranteed stability for projected dominance. The silence from the front office suggests they know this is a massive bet that Rob Pelinka has to get exactly right.
And I believe the move is essential because the team is performing so well. This isn't a desperation move. It's the final, logical maneuver to ensure that the vulnerability we all know exists doesn't show up when the stakes are highest. Gafford is the difference between a great season and a defining one.
So let me summarize my position then. While the attraction of getting a player like Daniel Gafford is obvious, prudence demands we weigh the long-term cost. The potential for this deal to be excessively expensive is real, especially if the impact isn't immediate. Sacrificing the 2031 pick and the current utility of Vanderbilt risks long-term instability for immediate, yet still speculative dominance. The front office's careful consideration here proves this gamble is far from a slam dunk.
And I'll just reiterate that this acquisition is necessary to go from contender to champion. The risk of inaction, of having the season collapse because of that vulnerable paint depth that will be exploited in the playoffs, that outweighs the risk of the trade itself. Gafford provides consistency, defense, and he's young enough to be an anchor for years. Failure to make this move would be a failure of ambition, plain and simple.
It's a fascinating, high-stakes decision. It really demonstrates that perennial tension between immediate glory and long-term sustainability.
Absolutely. The decision they make or don't make in the coming weeks will define not just this current season, but potentially the entire trajectory of this franchise for the next decade.